listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
Hey, what's going on? Hope things are all great and welcome along to a new Straight to Video podcast. Pretty special chat on today's show, which I hope you'll enjoy and take something away from as I speak to Justin Sandler. Now, when I started this show, I wanted to really dive into people's journeys, whether it be music, film, TV, or whatever creative path that person may have taken. As well, of course, talking about their local record shop or where they rented their first 18 certificate horror film from, you know, the real important stuff. But occasionally, someone will have been on such an incredible, inspiring, and unpredictable journey that it blows me away and really makes me feel grateful to have these talks and also to bring them to you guys too. And today's is certainly one of those. I became aware of Justin back around the mid-2000s during the MySpace days when he was playing drums for a Hollywood band called the Tattooed Millionaires. If you're a rock fan and on MySpace back then, well, you will remember this band. They were certainly ahead of the curve when it came to promoting yourself on this new and exciting internet platform. Every day you would see their faces and they really knew how to get their name out there. I would get the chance to see them perform at the Cat Club in Hollywood back around 2005, I believe, and then my old band TCC would do a couple of shows with them here in the UK. Since that time, I've followed Justin's career through not only his music, but also his acting. Perhaps I've tried to copy his haircut too every now and again, and it was very cool to spot him on screen with Zac Efron in the movie 17 Again, where he is credited on IMDb as simply Goth Bully. I was like, hey, I know that guy. We chat all about Justin's career from growing up wanting to be a rock star drummer through to moving to California where he would work both behind and in front of the cameras, but in 2017 he would have a life-changing event occur which would alter his path forever when he was diagnosed with cancer. How he handled this whole event and how he used it to inspire, encourage and give hope to other people going through similar events is amazing and it is really great to hear, and I hope you will take something from it when you hear Justin's story. Before we dive in, I have as always need to shout to the great people who continue to support the show through Patreon. It means a lot to have you on board and to interact behind the scenes. If you're a regular listener to this show and would like to get involved too, please visit patreon.com/STVpod to find out more on how you can help grow the show and get your hands on some exclusive merch and extra podcasts too. And be sure to visit our friends at Dead Skull Coffee, where as a listener to the show, you can grab a sweet 15% discount on their ground and full bean coffee by simply adding the promo code STV on checkout. Dead Skull Coffee are a great independent business with a rock and roll ethic and attitude, so it's awesome to have them alongside us. Just head on over to deadskullcoffee.co.uk to find out more, and why not share photos of your coffee too, because even the package is rocking when it arrives. Alright, I didn't need to say much during this chat with Justin as he's such a great storyteller. I pretty much just let him do his thing and it's all the better for it. Please let me know what you think of this episode, and if you want to reach out to Justin, he's on all the social media platforms at simply Justin Sandler, but take some time to check out all his amazing projects at justinsandler.com. This is a good one, so please sit back and enjoy my straight to video talk with Justin Sandler.
What's up, man?
How you doing, man? You all right?
Good. How you been?
I'm all right. I'm all good. How was the 4th of July weekend?
You know what? I mean, we were really low-key here. Honestly, my wife and I spent the day cleaning, organizing, chores, you know, just doing things like that. A lot of fireworks in my neighborhood. I don't know how things are by you, but...
Our fireworks celebrations November the 5th.
Got it.
July's the 4th when you said, screw all you British. We're going to do our own thing.
Yeah, you guys should be having an anti-celebration, right? I don't know how the people around here get them because they're illegal in this state, you know, like these massive explosive M80 type fireworks, but they've been going off for months now. It's crazy. Like we took a drive we went up into the hills and had a really beautiful view of the entire Los Angeles Valley. You're just like, you look like you're in a war zone. I mean, it's just everywhere. And then you're driving down the streets and people are lighting off fireworks in the middle of the street. And it's pretty crazy, but you know, welcome to Los Angeles.
Whereabouts are you? Are you right in Hollywood or are you just outside?
I used to be in Hollywood. I spent my first 8 years in the Hollywood area. Now I live in the Valley area called like Sherman Oaks. That sounds familiar. It's just right over the hill. So like right over the hill for me is West Hollywood and Beverly Hills. If I just would head straight south over the hill, it's not total suburbia here, but you're really able to do more with your space. So like, for example, you know, like on our property, we've got a house, a really nice size yard that we have events in, and it's all decked out. And then we've got this studio here. which is, even though there's instruments behind me, this is really a photography and film production company that we own. And so we do all our photo shoots here. I have my editing set up right over there. I do, video editing and stuff. So to have this kind of space to live and work at home while in separate buildings, which is really awesome to have a separate space. You wouldn't be able to get something like this typically in like Hollywood. And if you did, it would be like $10,000 a month or something stupid. I mean,
wow.
It's wasteful how much they're charging down there. So it's nice up here. And I feel like I'm really centralized because I can get to Hollywood in 15 minutes. I can also get to other parts of the valley. I can get to the west side a lot easier. It's really like this area, you can really shoot in either direction and you're totally centralized without the traffic of like being right in the thick of a Hollywood area. So I'm cool with it. I didn't think I'd ever want to live in the valley, especially when I was younger out here, because it is a little farther from like the Sunset Strip and all like the, sleazy action. But I've come to like it. I've grown to like it.
You've been on quite the crazy journey. I mean, there's many parts which we could focus on and fill up an entire podcast episode. But if it's cool with you, I want to try and give people a bit of an insight into your journey from, I believe it's Chicago to the West Coast, the different paths you've taken, of course, the events of the last few years. Where exactly are you from and what kind of things were you into back then?
Grew up in Chicago in the northern suburbs, for those who know the area. As a kid, it was pretty typical stuff, sports. In music, I mean, I started playing music when I was in first grade. I really wanted to be a drummer from the get-go. And I got a pair of sticks when I was a little kid, but school didn't offer drums in first grade. Your choices were violin, viola, or cello. So I started on the violin. I played for 3 years, didn't like it. I was like, this is crazy. I'm part of like this massive orchestra of people all playing the same stuff. I'm like, I got to be the rock star, man. I got to step out front and have a little more thing going on. I just felt that in third grade. So I'm like, I'm going to play drums. Forget this. In fourth grade, I was able to start playing drums in the school band. By fifth grade, there was so many drummers in the upper level band that I was sort of unable to even get in as a drummer. There was too many extra spaces of people not playing. And I ended up playing the trumpet of all things. And I accidentally got pretty good at it. And they needed more horn players than drummers. And so I ended up playing trumpet all throughout junior high, all throughout high school. I was by my senior year of high school, I was the lead soloist in the jazz group and in the marching band. And we won lots of awards doing that. So I still got my horn. It's over there in the corner. I don't bust it out too often, but I got it still. I always wanted to be a drummer though. And so finally around 15 years old or so, I started messing around. I started playing on some friends' kits when I was 14, teaching myself some beats. By 15, I was using the drum set at school after hours just to jam and try to like learn. And by the time I was 16, I got like my first band. By my senior year, I got decent. And then suddenly I'm in 3 bands at 2 different high schools, playing like the battle of the bands and all that stuff. That was a lot of fun, getting to play music. I kept trying to do athletics, but I wasn't very good at most athletics. And I was really small, like I've got on the football team, but I was like 130 something pounds and got my ass kicked every day. I tried. And I think I love the sport, but I was doing it for different reasons. Like, here's where I'll just be very open with you and your audience, because that's, I think, where the gold is anyways. I didn't feel respected. I got bullied a lot. Did not feel respected by fellow kids in school. A lot of my experience in junior high and high school was pretty miserable. And I thought by like joining the football team, I would garner the respect of the jocks and the girls. And it didn't really work. They didn't respect me on the team either. It's so like once people make an opinion of you, it's very hard to change it. Even though they had no reason to think I was anything. No one knew me.
You were just a target for them.
Yeah, I was a small guy. So I was easily a target. Maybe I hung out with some kid that was not the coolest kid in school. And they associate you with that, whatever the case may be. But I will say, by the time my senior year came around and I got on stage and I was rocking in this battle of the bands on the drums, a lot of the people were like, whoa, like they suddenly saw me as much cooler, which is an interesting thing to feel. It's like, wow, when I got up and rocked out on the drums, people's perception changed. When I played the trumpet in the band, I was the band geek. So I associated like, wow, like, okay, that's where the cool is, like on the drums. Keep going that way.
What was your thing? What was the music you was into?
Oh man, it was, I got into music, in the late 80s. So my first albums were Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. It was Def Leppard. Hysteria was my first concert, was Def Leppard. And
In the Round,
yeah. It was Def Leppard and LA Guns opening band, who I didn't know who they were at the time. But there's a crazy story. I'm going to skip way ahead. But a few years back, I did a show in Denver with Phil Lewis from LA Guns. We did a show together and I was sitting backstage with him and having a glass of wine and we were chatting. And I was like, all right, Phil, I just got to like lay this out here. Let's take us back to 1988. I'm at my first ever concert, my first rock show, Def Leppard in the Round. The opening band was none other than LA Guns featuring you on vocals. Therefore, you are the first rock band I saw live. And here we are about to share a stage together. He was really taken by that. It was a cool moment. We got to have a good exchange about that and share that. Like, who else gets to do that, you know, from a kid to an adult? And
exactly.
Get to play a gig with the guy that you saw first play a show when you were just a little kid. So that was really cool. Yeah, so I was into all that and Poison and like all the 80s rock stuff.
Just larger than life stuff though, man. It was just huge back then.
It was so much fun too. And, you know, I loved the stupidly big drum kits, you know, and just the excess and the hair. And it was all just so attractive. It still is. Like, I still get like, I put on the old, I call it the cock rock, right? My wife says it sounds like drowning cats, but I still love it. It still takes me back to a place where I felt happy, especially when I was going through times of high school that weren't quite as fun or where I was suffering. I'd put on that music and rock out to it, and it would make me feel awesome. I mean, I got into Sabbath and Zeppelin. I started playing a lot of Bill Ward Sabbath beats and started playing John Bonham beats. And like, that really inspired me as a drummer. And I kept growing as a player through that. And like, I thought like, okay, I'm going to be a pro rock drummer. I'm going to be on these big stages. That's where I'm going. And then I got accepted into college at Indiana University. And then my folks were like, all right, so we're going to help you a little bit with college, blah, blah, blah. We have a lot of musicians in my family, all who seem to be starving artists. So they're like, we're really going to encourage you to not major in music at school, especially if we're going to help you, you know, get a real degree. So I was like, but fine, I'll get a real degree. So what I do, I got a degree in directing and in theater, about as real as a music degree.
Have you always been into movies though? Was that a big thing as a kid?
I mean, I loved movies, but I didn't think I'd be a film director or anything like that. That wasn't really on the radar. I just really enjoyed cinema. And when I got to college, it was like, okay, let's figure out what I'm going to do. I'm taking psychology, I'm taking law, I'm taking science. I'm like, I don't like any of this shit. None of it. My grades were shit. And I just wasn't able to really grasp onto anything. I'm like, I just want to play music. Like, none of this feels creatively inspiring to me. And then I got into a class where I was doing some in-studio directing. And I was like, ooh, this feels cool. I'm working with people. I'm calling the shots. I'm making things happen. And then I'm like, maybe here's an area I can go. And I just started doing more classes there. And suddenly I was like, this is filling me. This is really creative. And so I ventured onto this telecommunications degree where I focused on in-studio TV directing. And my minor was in theater, where I was focusing on acting and theater directing. And so it all became about performance and direction and creative exploration. I kept playing drums. I had bands all throughout. We played frat parties and bars and stuff. So I didn't stop playing, but I definitely pursued getting the degrees that I did. And by my senior year, I went from like my first year being on the probation list, like you might get kicked out next semester, to my last year where I was on the dean's list at a 3.65 GPA. And they're like, and it just goes to show that when I focused on the classes that really resonated with me, even though they were, you know, higher level classes, I did really good. And that's where I see, like, I look at school today and like, I see kids being squeezed in these boxes. You know, it's like me back in school. I have ADHD. I found this out later in life. I was so bad in reading and in math in these areas, but they still force you into them. And then when you don't do well, you feel stupid. If we would just figure out where the strengths are and cater the program to the strengths of kids growing up, I think we might have a much different outlook and outcome. But that's like a whole nother topic.
Was Indiana University your first time away from home?
As far as like living elsewhere, yeah.
Did it give you a chance to kind of reinvent yourself again, moving away?
It did. I'm glad you asked. You know, as much as the degrees were great and I learned a lot of things that I still use to this day, I think the biggest thing I learned at college was how to find who I was. You know, how to step out of that person who was like this shy, bullied kid in high school to finding my footing, to finding more confidence in who I was and what I wanted to do, to learning just more about myself and understanding like that I can transition to being an adult. So college had a lot of experience. I mean, I partied my ass off too, but college had a lot of really good experience that gave me, you know, life experiences. Which was really interesting is that when I graduated from college, I went back to Chicago. I moved back into my parents' house in the suburbs, which was also a weird feeling because I went from having this level of freedom of living in my own house with friends at school to now back under my parents' roof. I finally found my first career job about 3.5 months after I got back to Chicago, and it was producing and directing local television in a cable market, which happened to also be in the burbs, and the money wasn't great. So the idea of moving into the city on my own would have been beyond my means at the time. And I would have had to commute all the way back past my parents' house, even further north. It made no sense. So I lived with them for 2 years. And I will say those 2 years, I struggled quite a bit. I didn't know what to do with them. I wanted the freedom. I wanted to continue growing, but now I'm back under sort of the feeling of like the high school, and it was a weird time for me. Like this couldn't sustain, because once you start to grow and then you start to get compressed again, your growth starts to stunt. I was acting weird. I was doing weird things, and it wasn't healthy.
How old was you then? Was you like early 20s, or was it just before then?
Yeah, I was 22 to 24, those 2 years. Yeah. But I stuck it out, and I did have good experiences. I produced some really cool stuff on the local market. And then I got an opportunity to meet with the creative services director for ABC and Fox affiliate channels in the Palm Springs market in California.
How did that come about? Did they see some work of yours, or did you reach out to them in any way?
Yeah, it's a cool story. My oldest friend in the world, my buddy Jonas, who we grew up together from first grade on in one suburb. And then even though our families moved into other areas, we maintained our friendship. It was actually him who, when we were like 14 years old, yeah, he got a drum set, didn't know how to play it. And I went and sat down on his kit without him in the room. And I figured out my first real drum beat on his drum set. And that's when he came bolting into the room and asking me, how the hell are you doing that? I'm like, I don't know. I'm playing though. So yeah, he and I have been friends, and we're still to this day. And he had moved out to that area because his parents went there while he was still in college. He had moved there. He was working for the station as in ad sales for the ABC market. And I just went out to visit him for a couple day long weekend. It was November. The Chicago weather was already turning for the worse. And I got a cheap weekend at Sabre Fair, and I went out just to hang. But I had this sort of feeling before I left that maybe I should have with me on my video cassette a little reel of some of the work I had done at the previous station. So I went with him. I had no idea I'd be seeing anybody. I just had a feeling to have it with me. Sure enough, like Monday came, I was still there, and he's like, I got to go into the office for a few hours. Why don't you come? I'll show you around, introduce you to the people. He introduced me to this guy, James, who happened to be the creative services director. James was like, yeah, what have you been doing? I'm like, I'm been directing, producing TV in Chicago. What's next? And I was like, I'm looking for something new. And he's like, well, it just so happens we just took over. They were ABC. We just took over Fox and Telemundo. And I'm going to need some new commercial directors soon. It's something you're interested in, we can talk. And we sat down and he watched my entire reel of materials. We had a good dialogue. I went back to Chicago about 2-3 months later. Phone rings. It's James. He's like, we've moved into the new building. Everything's sorted now. And I definitely need to get a couple of qualified commercial directors in here. I can't really pay you much more than you're getting now, but you'll be out here in California. You'll get to do more creative things, And I was like, yep, I'm in. It was a no-brainer. I was so excited to get the opportunity to not only a more challenging work, but the thought of moving to the state of California was like, yes, I want to go. I want to go stretch out. I want to see what California is like. I want to get out of this Chicago winters. These are hell.
Plus, you're being invited to California as well. You're not like, I'm just going to wing it and see what happens.
Didn't just roll up on the Greyhound bus and be like, I'm here to make my dreams come true. Yeah. And I'm really lucky because a lot of people that I've met, and I've met a lot of people who have come straight to Hollywood with like big, bright eyes and thinking they're going to be an overnight success. And they roll in and they get here and they realize how fucking expensive it is and how hard it is and how competitive it is and just how vast this city is. And 1 year down the road, they're already moving back to Kansas or wherever they came from, because they didn't really have a realistic expectation for what it was like out here. Or maybe they had more of the stars in their eyes and not in their heart. And that's a big thing. The idea of being like a famous performer, actor, musician, whatever, is more attractive than the work to actually do it because the love of it is so different. But yeah, I got the chance to go to Palm Springs, which was a great stepping stone because it let me sort of pick up where I left off in college and kind of grow as a human for the next 2 years, where I was on my own, but in a small market. Rent was cheap and I had work. Things were easy and I could sort of work my way through it gradually and not just get slammed into holy shit, because that would come later. And I mean, I wasn't even ready when it came. And trust me, if I didn't do this step beforehand, it really would have been hard. I mean, I spent 2 solid years in that market. It was beautiful there. It gets hot, but I lived in Palm Desert, right in the middle of that valley. I mean, 115, 120 in the summer. It can get pretty brutal, but it's beautiful most of the year. Just mountains and flowers and hikes and everything's close by and it's just chill. There isn't really traffic. I could go in and out of the office and work on the commercials. They gave me freedom to work nights and edit on weekends. And I got to just do my own thing. I was writing directing, producing, doing everything for the commercials. And it was really cool until it wasn't anymore. Like I squeezed that lemon till there was nothing left in it.
Was music taking a bit of a backseat?
Absolutely. Yeah. There was no music at that point. I didn't even have my drums with me when I first moved out. I got them out there and then I set them up in the dining room rather, just so I could jam. And I would, I'd sit down and I'd rock out. The music that I did more than drums was actually guitar. I had brought an acoustic guitar with me and I would sometimes spend my nights just strumming and just teaching myself how to play some guitar. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. My fingers are real clumsy though. I'm really more of a drummer than a guitar player. But yeah, there was no music when I lived there for those 2 years. Just whatever I played on my own. That's a big thing right there because I was missing something. That aspect of that creative performance that I wasn't doing in just creating these local commercials, which were fine, but they weren't like amazing all the time dealing with these people. So finally in 2001, I decided it was time to move on. I needed something else, even if that meant quitting the station and just throwing caution to the wind. I had some money saved up. I left that behind and I moved right into the heart of Hollywood with stars in my eyes and dreams of overnight success.
It finally got you.
And then what happened? Like, that's not how it works. You think it is. I mean, I was in 3 acting classes a week. I was even taking an acting class before I even moved. I was driving 2 hours to commute each way just to come up to a 1 week acting class because I wanted to make sure that I was tuned up again and that I moved here. I was ready. I was doing scene study 1 day a week. I was doing improv 1 day a week and I was doing stage fighting another, so I was like fully immersed, just started really diving in, trying to make things happen. I started booking some student films and some indie films and I got an agent and I was going on some auditions, but nothing really big or like really with any pay was happening for a while. And then I lived in this building that was like this explosion of Hollywood insanity. I mean, there was actors, musicians, models, prostitutes, DJs, club promoters. Like it was like an insane building.
How did you find that place?
I didn't know the people that were living there. I found it was a great like 2-story apartment for a good price. I had my own balcony off my bedroom overlooking like all of like Los Angeles. I could see the hills and West Hollywood and North. And it was like a beautiful place and right in the middle of the area. And then I started meeting people and everyone was like young and hip and cool. And everyone was like there to do stuff. And a lot of people from that building have done some really cool things. I ended up meeting some of the musicians. I started playing drums for this one girl, and then I met this other cat, and then he brought me into another band. I started playing with them, and then I started really feeling like this. Oh, music feels so good, and like I started going more to music and less to acting. And I was like, what am I here to do? I mean, am I here to be an actor? Am I here to be a musician? Like I always wanted to be a drummer. Maybe all this stuff is what got me to here. Got into a band in 2004 that really felt like a band I could do something serious with. Band called Gaz, great songwriters, really cool indie rock kind of feel. And we were doing some good shows. We had a following that we were building and we did a music video. We recorded an EP together. And then things just didn't quite manifest. And I didn't feel that things were moving where they should. And relationship between the band wasn't where it needed to be. And so we parted ways. And then I found myself finding another band, which was insane, a band called Tattooed Millionaires. Which this is how we met, I believe.
You guys were the kings of MySpace, dude.
We were. And that's why I really like when I met them and I saw the stuff Johnny was doing, I was like, this guy's a visionary. Like he gets it. He's doing and seeing things that no one's doing yet. We were doing Friday night live webcam parties, 100 people from around the world would be partying with us. We'd play live, we'd hang out, we'd fuck around, and we'd just have a lot of fun. We were like working the MySpace angle. We were like #1 in the rock and indie, getting just a lot of stuff happening. We were able to book several tours through that. We were growing this fan base. I was like, if any band I've ever been in is going to do something, the pieces are together for this band.
How was it in Hollywood at that time for a band?
Better than it was now. And it wasn't that great. It still was always a hard draw, The #1 act every week, they call themselves now Steel Panther. A lot of people in the world know they are. And they're great guys. I know all of them personally. But they were originally Metal Shop. And I played a lot of gigs with them as an opener. Then they were Metal School. And then they were Steel Panther. I've played with them on all their incarnations and all their different names and all the different venues they've played at. I've opened for them with different bands. Always great guys. But the thing was, that was the show every week that was selling out. And everyone else was having a struggle bringing the crowd. And it went to show that their show brought celebrities. And it was sort of theatrical and it was shtick. And it was something that people would go as an event. And everyone else was trying to like, come see my band. But everybody and their mother has a band and a flyer in their hand outside of the whiskey, So while we were, playing good shows and building a crowd, Hollywood is always place where we wanted to do our own thing. We did a lot of our own shows in our own loft. And then we'd hit the road and had the fan base building outside of it in Europe and the rest of America. We did some really cool stuff. We recorded 2 records. We toured Europe twice in 2006. We got our own tour bus in 2007. And we were like getting some real notoriety. We were playing huge parties in Las Vegas. We were about to get our bus sponsored and we were going to be on the Warped Tour. We were like, all right, like all this hard work, like things are happening. And then everything crashed. There's a lot to the story for a different time. But things stopped working. Things really stopped working.
I think you perhaps find that a lot with bands just before things are about to tip over the edge. That's when everything just goes to shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a thing with a lot of people in a lot of areas of life. You know, there's a great book by Gay Hendricks called The Big Leap, which is all about this. It's that ceiling you kind of put over your head, that ceiling of self-sabotage. He calls it your upper limit. So it's like you're going, but something in your self-worth makes you realize that maybe you don't belong at that next level. And you do something unconsciously to sabotage it. And that's what happened. And let's just say it wasn't me who did the self-sabotage. And I felt that the band hit that upper limit and was now flying fast down. And it became very unhealthy in many ways. For me, I felt like I needed to, for my own sanity, my own sovereignty, I needed to move on. And so I amicably parted ways with the group and went on to do other things. And I started playing with some other bands. And again, I started having some success with another band called Me and My Machine. And that felt like it was going to be really cool. It was more of an electronic rock industrial group. Our singer, actually, she went on to sing with Lords of Acid later. And that was like really cool, but that was also full of toxicity. And then I'm like, you know what? Fuck all this. If I'm going to play drums, here's my rate. I was done with the original band. Like I want to do other things and I can't just keep wasting time with these. So I said, you know what? From now on, I'm going to play for my rate. Whether that's, I got into a tribute band doing Guns N' Roses tribute for many years. And then bands from Europe would hire me to do, one-offs when they'd come out. And that felt good. I've been doing a lot of like TV and film as a musician, drummer, guitar player. I worked on a lot of big shows over the years doing various instrumental acting parts. And those were really cool too. And then I met my wife, which wasn't my wife when I met her, but in 2009 we met. And by 2011 we got married. We also opened up our own company. And I came in with, I was a director, editor, and writer. And I had put some of that on the shelf for a while. And she was a cinematographer and a photographer, a director. And we brought ourselves together and said, hey, we fit all the parts. Like I do things strong where you don't and you where I don't. And we could do something with this. And we created 3 Cube Studios and we got the LLC and got the business running in 2011. And here we are 10 years later, we're still in business. And, we've been doing great work over the years, photography work, film work. We did our own short film that came out in 2016 that I wrote, directed, starred in, edited. She was a cinematographer, co-director, producer. We did 21 festivals with that movie, won a lot of awards. We distributed it on a cable network and on Amazon. So like we did some cool things. We started working with a lot of corporate clients and just kind of building business. Meanwhile, like here's another random fact. Like I also started a payment processing business right around 2008, where I do credit card processing for businesses. And I'm still doing that to this day. So like I'm a musician, artist, blonde, who also has a little bit of a business brain in there somewhere. Can't always find it. I got to knock it loose a little bit, but then I'm like, whoa, there you are. And then I get him to turn up for a little bit, do some numbers, and then he goes back. But I realized that I needed other things to supplement this crazy world. And like what I really like say to people, especially now, is that I don't rely on the industry to pay my bills.
I think that's the way forward now. If you're in the creative industry, you've got to have different income streams from all different areas to make it work.
It's smart. And even the most successful actors and musicians, they sometimes make their biggest money off of the other things that they star. Like 50 Cent, right? He did Vitamin Water. He made way more money on Vitamin Water than anything he did as a rapper. And a lot of these guys, they start businesses, companies, endorsements, sponsorships. So business savvy people treating show business as business, you really have to think of it that way. And so having my own companies that also fulfill what I love to do, like I can still say that what I did in college, I'm still doing to this day. I'm directing and editing and working in TV and film. A lot of people got all these fancy degrees and then 3-4 years out of school, they're already in a whole other field. So I'm still using what I learned, and that's really awesome. And I'm getting to do the production from the behind the scenes. I'm still, getting to play the drums with, over the years. And then my acting picked up again. Like I kind of had a interesting thing happen in 2007. I was just going to do some extra work on a film playing a surfer punk. And then they gave me a call and said, we want you to come in and read for one of the roles. So I was like, oh, okay. I was about to go on tour with Tattoo Millionaires for the summer. And so I was just doing a little extra work to make some cash. And I went into audition. I got the sides right on the scene. I went into this little small office overlooking the ocean in Malibu. And I walked in the room and there was Matthew McConaughey and the director of the movie and a camera guy. I was like, oh, all right, here we go. And so we did a lot of improv. We did a little bit of script stuff. He looked me in the eyes and was like, at the end, he was like, you know what? That was really good, man. And he shook my hand. And I felt like that sincerity when he said that. I got a call back, went back up to the same exact space. We threw the script out. This time we did mostly improv, had a lot of fun. And then a week later, I got called and they said I booked it. And I went and shot 3 scenes on this film with McConaughey. And that was like, oh, okay, I can be an actor again. But then I went on tour, so I didn't do anything with that.
That was the film Surfer Dude, right?
Surfer Dude, yeah. And actually the coolest scene I did in that film was cut from the final, but it is in my acting reel. So you can always still see it on my reel. So I get to get in his face.
I always remember seeing the Zac Efron film 17 Again.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
The wonderfully titled Goth Bully.
I was a goth bully. I got those roles a lot, like goth bully and like goth kid, punk kid. What's funny about Hollywood is that I've been cast as rocker, goth, metalhead, what are there some others, punk, and I've looked virtually the same. They don't really know the difference. Whatever they'll use all those different terms and they think it's all the same thing when we know they're clearly different. But essentially I've booked those roles as that, so long story longer at this point, in 2012, I had signed with a new commercial agent and they sent me out on my first commercial audition for a Comcast commercial, playing a rock star in the airport. I'm spinning my drumsticks and I'm in the airport. And I booked this commercial. And this was my first commercial as a principal actor. And everyone seeks, commercial work out here because that's where a lot of the money is to be made. And the overnight success, the stars in the eyes that I talked about earlier, why this is important to understand is that from 2001 to 2007, it took me to book my first, what I consider legitimate acting role. That wasn't a student or indie film or something like that, but with not real, they're all real. A-list actor, major crew, big film, theatrical release type film. So it took me 6.5 years to book my first one of those. It took me till 2012 to book my first national commercial as a principal. And so how many people have come and gone in that time? And the name of the game, fella, is don't ever give up. That's the gig. If it's in your heart and your passion, you keep doing what you have to do, but you never stop because it's inside of you. And that's where it separates the people who are here just for the idea of being a famous person and those who are here because they are artists. No matter what they do, no matter how they try to change the outfit or comb the hair, they're still an artist on the inside and they have to still pursue that. And that's how I felt. And that's why I kept going.
There must have been some crappy times during that, though, because that's a long time. I mean, what was the things that just kept you going during that time? Because it's the same as when I don't know if it's the same, but when you're in a band, you do all these shit gigs, this isn't working. Then you do that one good gig. Oh, I enjoyed that. And it just keeps you going for that extra amount of time. Is this similar things with the acting and stuff that just kept you, that carrot dangling, as they say?
Yeah, I guess because, I enjoyed it. And I think the music was a good distraction because I stopped focusing on acting so much. A lot of times we're so desperate to get the acting role that the desperation ruins it, right? And so I became just like when I booked that McConaughey picture, right? I was not in the mindset of acting at that moment. We had a 5-week tour coming up in a month. I wasn't even trying to be an actor. I was just trying to make a little extra cash before we hit the road. And so when I went in there, I just sort of didn't give a shit. And so weird, the less you care, the more you get. So the music was a good distraction, but yeah, there was certainly a lot of struggle with the music too. There was always struggle. I don't know. I just knew in my heart that there was no other option. So even through the struggle, even through the challenges, I just knew that there was no B plan. There was no, second step to move back into to go somewhere else. I wasn't going back to Chicago. I was here. And whatever the future was going to hold, I was in for the long ride. And I guess that's what just kept me going. And again, bringing more and more things in. I started working on my production business with my wife and building that. And then in a year later, that's when I picked up a new agent, and that's when I got that commercial. But then, in the next 4 years, I booked 6 national commercials with that agent. So, once sometimes you break through one wall, you create opportunity because you see what it's like on that other side. And then all of a sudden you get to sort of parlay that into more. It's still challenging. I mean, I I went really hard. I was going strong and life was going really well then. Like suddenly I found myself between 2012 and 2016. Our business was growing. Both my businesses were growing. I was doing more acting gigs. I was playing in a couple different bands. I was playing cool shows, getting paid for every gig. Every gig had a paycheck and a hotel room, especially on the road. You know, all those things were clicking. That film that I talked about had just done that year-long festival tour. And then my wife and I were developing the next project. And we were like, all right.
How was it completing that film for you? Because if I'm right, it's about struggles of an artist and it speaks about tough stuff like depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. Was you pulling a lot of stuff from your own experiences and your journey, or was that kind of like a cleansing for you? Because it's welcome to where you've always been, right?
Yeah. Look at you. Did your homework. Yes. Welcome to where you've always been. You see the film, the title makes a lot of sense because it's really about coming back to where you already are. Like you already have it. Like you already are the Buddha or the rock star or whatever. Like stop looking out there, come back and find yourself, right? Find your alignment in a sense. I wrote this script not thinking that I was writing anything about me, but it turned out to be a little bit like me. And the wife that I wrote turned out to be a little bit like my wife. So the character is a spoken word artist, something I never considered myself to be. I never even thought I was a poet until I'm telling my wife, I'm not even a poet. I don't know how I wrote this. And then she's like, what about all those journals full of poetry? I'm like, maybe I've written a few over the years. Mostly I write more like lyrics. So I was like, it's more like songwriting, isn't it? But no, it's all the same. It's poetry, it's songs, it's both. The character had depression, something that I've struggled with. Also, the inability to see the beauty that surrounds him. That we all have so much amazing things in our lives that we fail to be grateful for because sometimes we start to focus on the pain versus all the amazing things that are really around us, all the opportunities, all the things we have to be grateful for. But when you get stuck in that tunnel vision of depression and you can't see outside of that, it becomes very sort of one-sided and you just feel like everything is crashing down on you. Now, this character was suicidal. I've never been suicidal, but I've been depressed and I've had stupid thoughts of doing stupid things. Not things I ever acted upon, but I've had the thoughts of doing really unhealthy and harmful things to myself that could have ended up in that, but I didn't. So the character had that. When I played the character, I didn't feel like I was playing myself. I definitely stepped into an acting role, but it was beautiful to go through that experience of a character who goes through that and has to drop into that depth of what it feels like, that pain that you don't want to live anymore. And that was intense acting for me. It was a lot of fun, question mark. Like it was like fun, but it was fun in a fulfilling way of like, this is really deep work that I'm doing. And then when we did the festival tour, that's really where it sort of hit the road because I was able to, do the Q&A after the screenings at all the festivals. And that's where I was able to talk more about the sort of message behind it and answer questions about depression and talk to people who are going through struggles and really see like, creating this art form with message, with a purpose really has a benefit. And as an artist, I think it's almost like my duty to try to create work that inspires and uplifts the world. Because if I'm going to create something anyway, why not make sure that both entertains and inspires? And that sort of fueled me back then. And now with what I've been through, which we haven't gotten to yet, really fuels me as far as the work I'm doing.
So everything is on the up. Career is taking off. Happy home life. Super creative and fulfilled.
Yeah.
Then the spring of 2017 rolls around.
Spring of 2017, everything was really clicking on all cylinders. We just finished that last festival. We just got an offer for distribution on a cable network called Shorts TV International. We were able to do the Amazon Prime distribution, which I was getting the paperwork for. Like we're getting everything ready for those distributions. We were starting to write the ideas for a film that we wanted to write together. Business was going well. All my businesses. I was playing in 2 bands. I was, athletically speaking, very healthy. Like I've always been very fitness minded, very healthy, even on the road, like always eating healthier options, always drinking a little less, trying to just do more to keep my body going. And I was really I've been a vegan since 2011. So my body was clean and strong. I was playing in a flag football league, which was a lot of fun. I hadn't done that since college and I really missed team sports. I was doing the Gold's Gym 12-week fitness challenge, which I said, what the hell? Let me jump in and see how much I can transform my body. So I felt incredible at the time.
Your calendar was full, dude.
It was full and I felt like here I go, things are about to really, I felt the next step coming. I felt like that. We talked about a little earlier about when you break through another wall and suddenly it's And I felt like, here I go, like I'm about to go in. I even was on a bike ride one day and I started to really feel it. And I looked up at the sky while I was riding. It was beautiful and clear and there's no one on the bike path. And I just started to scream, I am ready. And I was just yelling it. I was like so pumped up, and I was like doing a lot of personal development, a lot of books, a lot of, listening to a lot of motivational speakers, practicing Buddhism every day and other spiritualities, like really, really felt fulfilled in so many ways. And then one day I woke up really sick and I thought I had the flu. Everything about it felt like the flu. This was the middle of April 2017. Shakes, aches, headache, high fever, 102.3 that wouldn't break. It was a Saturday. We had a shoot that night in the club that we were hired to do. And I felt so sick that I told my wife, you're going to have to go and do this on your own. I can't even get out of bed. By the next day, I just felt heaviness on my chest. It felt like someone was like kneeling on my chest while I was trying to breathe. 3 days go by. The fever still hasn't broke. The chest pain feels horrible. It wasn't the flu. It clearly was something else. I got with my doctor. She had the foresight to order up a CT scan to find out why my chest was hurting so much. A couple of days later, I get a call from her office saying the doctor reviewed your results from the CT scan and she needs you to come in and see her tomorrow. No other information provided, which is crazy because I got this phone call as we were heading to a 3-hour event that we were shooting, a regular annual event that we did photography for every year. And so I'm like, well, what's going on? She's like, I can't tell you anymore. But she's like, we did refer you to a cardiothoracic surgeon, which I didn't know what that was. I had to look it up. That's a surgeon who deals with ailments and issues of the chest, the thoracic area. And I was like, wait, why am I getting that kind of a referral? What's in the CT scan? Couldn't get any information, spent the entire night in a tailspin, had to wait till 5 o'clock the next evening to go see my doctor. And then she comes out and she goes, all right, kiddo, you got a mass of some sort inside of your chest. We're not sure what it is. We can see right now, though, that it looks like it's growing into your heart. And it's about 13 centimeters long. So I've referred you to Dr. Jay Lee, who is the top cardiothoracic surgeon at UCLA. You're going to see him first thing Monday morning at 8 a.m. And he's going to start doing further tests to figure out what this could be. I have no idea what it is, so I'm not even going to speculate. Try to take the weekend, relax. Don't get overexcited about anything. Let's wait till you see him and what he does. So I saw him. He ordered up 2 weeks of just ridiculous testing, PET scans, chest x-rays, a full surgical procedure where they had to puncture my chest plate and pull a piece of this mass out. A crazy one, they had to do a ultrasound of my testicles, which, let me tell you, just laying back in this bed while this man spent about a half hour probing my balls and just having casual dialogue with me about his family and stuff. It was weird, I'll tell you that. Brain MRI. Long story longer, the date was May 4th of 2017 when I had my return appointment to see the doctor. I chose that date. I asked if that date was open because May the 4th be with you. So I wanted to have that little extra, bit of nerd behind me. And I went in to see him and he said, all right, we've gotten all the results back and we've come up with a diagnosis. You have cancer. There's a germ cell tumor inside of your chest. It is now about 13.9 centimeters. So it was growing fast. What we can see from all the scans we've done is that it's actually adhered itself to your right lung and your heart, possibly other things as well. This type of tumor grows very fast. It hasn't spread anywhere else in your body yet. It's self-contained, but these types of tumors are very fast. And we have to immediately jump on this because it is bending your heart already. Oh, by the way, you have a cracked rib on your right side of your chest too. So the tumor was so big that it was pushing my lung and then my lung against my rib and then the rib actually broke. So he's like, we're sending you right now to the other UCLA building to meet your new oncologist and they're going to go over the treatment plan with you. So we went to her and went through everything. And so what was told is that I was going to need to move into the hospital at UCLA because the chemo I had to do, there's 3 different kinds of chemo that I'd have to do 24 hours a day for a week at a time while living there because it had to be administered with all kinds of medicine and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, man, I don't want to do chemo. I'm very natural, I'm organic, healthy, chemo, bad. What else can we do? And she said, unfortunately, your tumor is growing so fast that I don't know anything else that would help start shrinking it soon enough. And if you don't do this now, you will potentially not die from the cancer itself, but from the fact that it's going to essentially pop your heart or push your heart out of the way so much that your heart will stop beating. And I was just like, holy shit. I asked all the questions, like, am I going to lose my hair? Like, yep. Like, no, my hair. There's a big thing in the rock and roll world. All the questions I didn't want to know about and I didn't want to do it. The prognosis said also that once the tumor registered dead in my scans, they were going to need to actually open my chest up and remove it because this type of tumor doesn't just disappear. And I was like, wait, I'm going to have a full open chest surgery too. I'm like, shit, I don't want that either. But why don't we just do that now? Skip the chemo. Let's just operate. And the thing is, they can't because this type of tumor is so hot. even a microscopic nick to the tumor, a little piece will break off and it'll fall somewhere else in my chest. It'll plant, it'll start growing again. It's so risky that they won't operate on it until they can determine for sure that all the cells are dead inside the tumor. Real fast, a germ cell tumor, everyone has germ cells, right? When we're just little embryos, little squiggly embryos with not much of a body yet, the germ cells release from where your brain would be, and they go down a little squiggle into your gonad. The germ cells turn into your egg or your sperm, and they'll go undergo meiotic cell divisions based on what you are, male or female. They're one of the only cells to do this. And then they form your reproductive abilities going forward, eggs in your sperm and things. So we all have them. Germ cells, despite the word germ, it has nothing to do with germs or germ theories. It's actually the name of the cell. Very fast growing cell because it's one of the first cells to release, which is why it's such a fast multiplying cell. Thing is, there are very, very rare cases where a germ cell doesn't make it to where it's supposed to go. It'll get sort of stuck along the way. And when it gets stuck, like mine got stuck, my chest wall formed around it, or it formed, behind it. And it was sort of embedded in my chest wall, just laying there dormant right in the very front of my chest. So I found out later, like in men, a germ cell tumor will appear in your abdomen, your chest, or your brain. And it's related to testicular cancer, right? Because of the germ cell. So now I know why they did the brain MRI and why they scanned my nuts and why all this stuff they had to do was all because they needed to figure out exactly what was going on. So that's what happened with me. And that's where mine ended up being. My oncologist also said, we're going to recommend you head to the sperm bank tomorrow too, because this chemo is going to ravage you. And if you ever think about having babies. So here I am, like just got my diagnosis, going through all these testings. And now I got to go into a little uncomfortable, sterile room with my wife and try to fill a container, which I did.
Oh, man.
Which I did. Let me just say this. I successfully made 14 vials, which when they spin them and they put them in these little vials, that means each one could be a baby. I have 14 vials in an ice tray in Santa Monica that I'm paying monthly rent on to this day. I have not used them yet. I don't know if I ever will. I don't know if my wife and I know we're kind of at the place where we're good at this point. We were thinking of having a baby before, but sort of like now we're kind of okay where we're at. But I'm still paying rent because I feel like I don't want to destroy them. I don't know, like just in case. Rent. Paying rent for an ice tray. So, I sort of like, I think down the road, I think someone, because my cancer is not hereditary. It's a misplaced cell. And the doctors told me you can't pass it on to an offspring. So I was like, well, maybe there'll be a couple who's having trouble conceiving, or a girl couple, or whatever the case may be, that is looking for a donor and wants me. Why not me? So I'm keeping them. I'm paying monthly rent in case somebody needs it in the future. If anybody in the audience is looking, let me know. Happy to help out with one of my vials.
You were documenting this entire journey. I remember even your very first video before like the actual diagnosis where you were saying like, look, something is potentially wrong with me and I'm getting this checked out. Did the response to those videos surprise you? Or was you like, wow?
At first, no. And then yes. So at first it was like something was wrong and we knew we had to tell people, especially our close friends. And my wife is like, I got to give her the credit because she was like, it'd probably be a lot easier if we put a video out there and share the news, because if you got to start calling people and texting people and fielding questions from people, it's going to be a lot, right? It's just going to be a lot. So why don't we instead make a video? We've got a studio, we've got the lights. First time we set it up, like we had 2 cameras, we had our lights up, I had a lav mic on, like we did it like pro. And I announced that we had found something. We were trying to figure out what it was, but it was a way for us to sort of start sharing the news a little bit. I mean, people still were blowing up our phones and our emails and stuff. It's like, please watch the videos so we don't have to answer, because it's overwhelming. Like you have no idea how overwhelming it is as it is. And then to have everybody calling in. And we know a lot of people, which is amazing. And I'm blessed to have such great friends and communities all over the world. Also, it can be overwhelming when they all want to know what's going on with you and want updates. So that was the driving factor between our first few videos, was to use it as a way to share the news where we could send it to everybody at the same time. So we did those, announced the diagnosis on another video. And then we just realized that, these are a great way to just sort of keep people posted on what's going on and to share. And we weren't thinking document it for any like future purposes. We were just doing Facebook Live, downloading the videos and then uploading them secondary to the YouTube channel, just so they were there. And by the time I was in the hospital, my wife brought a tripod over for me. Something interesting happened when I was going through stuff, especially when I was going through some of the struggles of, having like Like, I don't know if you can even see. I mean, obviously we're on audio mostly here, but I'm showing my chest. I've got a big scar from where the port was in my chest, which is in the upper left part of my chest. They installed a port to where I would take the chemo from. Getting that procedure done was really rough. Getting the chemo started was a challenge. Going through the first week of all the different medicines they were starting to pump through me, which was like, whoa, there's so many things. When I put the camera on and I'd go live, and I was raw and vulnerable, and I was sharing truth and from the heart, it became therapeutic for me. It became a way for me to talk out loud what I was experiencing. And with the live audience and no way to edit myself, I had to just share whatever was happening, and there was no editing. There was no going back. And so I was on the spot and I had to share, and I feel pretty comfortable in front of the lens. This is what I do. So to share in this space for me felt really good. It was almost like to the point where every time something would be going on that would start challenging me, whether it was good news, bad news, crazy news, I would go and I'd hit live and I'd be like, all right, friends, this is what I'm going through right now. This is what's happening. This is how I'm feeling. And then ultimately I'd bring it around somehow and bring a lesson in there. I'd always learn something while I was talking, and then I would teach that lesson at the end. And these videos, first it was like, oh my God, you have cancer. What do you need? To getting messages from people that I didn't even really know saying, oh my God, your videos are helping me or changing my life, saving me. Like the messages were coming in that whatever, you're sharing your vulnerability. Like, I'm not dealing with what you're doing, but it's helping me deal with what I'm going through. And it just started to show me that the more I shared, the more I was impacting other people's lives as well. And it was like triggering things in my brain that like something maybe bigger was going on. After the first round of chemo, I came back. I had my first vomiting experience and the nausea started kicking in. I was using cannabis oil the whole time. That was helping a lot, but it's heavy stuff. And about 10 days after my first week of chemo ended, my hair started falling out everywhere. I have some cool videos where I was showing clumps of hair just coming out. And it got to the point where the hair was falling out so fast that my wife's like, you are shedding more than all of our cats put together. We got to shave your head. Yeah. So still today, probably the most watched video that we did during all of this was the live on camera head shaving. And we did it. We shaved bald clean, which was like, I had never had a bald head before like that. And that was it. That was the day that I looked in the mirror and I saw a cancer patient looking back at me, which was also really interesting, right? Because all this time, like I still had my hair, I still looked cool, but then like now, holy shit, that's real. I look like cancer now. Even though my wife says you made cancer sexy, like, I rocked it still. Like I ate really healthy. I brought my own food to the hospital. I brought my own workout equipment. I was doing things every day, spiritually, writing, reading, doing physical activity, doing spiritual activity, just doing everything I could to keep myself tuned up. And it kept me stronger and healthier throughout. And that's why I really believe that you can't just lay back and watch TV and just hope that the medicine works. I think you have to be a really active participant in your own healing. But doing those videos continued to inspire others and myself. And I would say it was somewhere around maybe the third round of chemo where I really got the biggest message at that point that I needed. And it was the line, and I actually had heard this line in the movie Doctor Strange a couple months earlier. And Tilda Swinton has this line where she turns to Doctor Strange and she says, "It's not about you." And that line came back into my brain. I was like, it's not about you. And I started to realize that, yes, this is me and my story and it's about me, but really in the big picture, it's not about me. It's about something so much bigger. Look how many lives I can impact. Look how much change I can create in this world if I can survive this and show people how I did it and show people what they can do to better their own lives, whether they're going through cancer or something else. Like, this isn't about me. This is about something bigger than me. And so I started pushing my videos even more and I started sharing even more. And things got harder. I mean, after the 4 rounds of chemo, I was ravaged. Like I was bad shape. I felt ill. I was losing weight. I looked like hell. And then I had to go for my open chest surgery. That was hard. They sawed me open. It was an almost 8-hour surgery. They got the tumor out. Unfortunately, they had to take out other things too, because anything the tumor was stuck to, they had to carve around it. So that included losing a large portion of my right lung, first and second lobe of my right lung completely taken out. One side of my heart's pericardial sac, which is that sac that cases your heart. They had to take the entire side off where the tumor was stuck. And they used a material called Gore-Tex, which is like what raincoats and gym shoes and things are made out of. Perhaps the most shocking of all the things they did, though, was that we have a vein called a superior vena cava, which is our main vein, not that main vein, but the other main vein. And it's on the top of your heart and it brings the blood back in from your whole upper body. So that vein had to be completely cut out of my body because it was too damaged. And you can't live without this vein. So they had to do something to make sure that I still had this vein. And what they did was they rebuilt it with bovine heart tissue.
So you're part cow.
Moo, what? Yeah, I woke up part cow. And trust me, as a vegan, it was a little shocking to find out that I had cow inside of me. I didn't know how to quite take that. Like that wasn't in the paperwork. When you go into a surgery, you sign a lot of stuff. And in this type of surgery, one of the first things I had to sign was, you may die during this procedure. Okay, sign my name, and all the things I had to sign off on never did say you may wake up as part of another animal. That just wasn't there. Everything I checked off, you may die, you may this, you may that. Anyway, becoming part cow was not on the list. So I give gratitude every day to the cow that helped save my life. I had an insane week of living in the ICU, chest tubes coming out of me. I couldn't move my head. I couldn't roll my butt. I mean, I was just laying there. I couldn't do shit. I could barely feed myself. I really think that I hit a pretty interesting low point of my life. And I mean this in a more of a comical way, but the position I was in, I had IVs coming out of my hand, my ankles, my neck. I had tubes coming out of my chest. I couldn't do things for myself. But after a couple of days in the ICU, they encourage through medicine bowel movements because those weren't happening. And when you go have a bowel movement in the ICU, when you're all rigged up, you're not allowed to do anything. Too much risk going on. So the nurse had to come in and sort of help maneuver me from the bed onto this little seated toilet in the middle of the room. And he handed me a buzzer. And as soon as I was complete, I had to hit the buzzer. And then he had to come in to clean me up. So there I am. He stands me up. And I'm standing looking out the window of my ICU room with the curtain pulled. And there's a nice Filipino gentleman standing behind me with wipes, wiping my ass. And I'm like, yep, this is as low as it gets. I couldn't imagine anything getting worse or lower than this moment now. I mean, it's funny and it's not.
Do you remember the guy's name?
Man, I don't remember his name right now. I remember a lot of my nurses. Actually, some of my nurses were the most amazing people in the world that I'm still friends with today. I have their numbers. We're friends on social media. This guy was only my nurse for 2 nights. He did very nursely stuff, but we didn't have as much of a rapport as I had with my other nurses. Maybe that's okay, better that way, because we had an intimate experience that I don't need to share with somebody else. So, I got out of the hospital that week. For the next 2 months, I had to sleep in a hospital bed in my room. I couldn't, my wife had to even lift my head up because my chest had to be, basically put back together with this titanium coil. And I still have it inside of me. I finally got the all clear after 2 months to go out and start rehab, working out again, little walks, little things. So I started building, and here I am I'm going to show everybody how fast I rebuild. Maybe I was a little aggressive. I did a little too much too soon. I don't know if that really caused the problem that was going to happen, but I was definitely really excited about getting my body back. I mean, my weight got down to 134 pounds. I was hairless, top to bottom, hairless. That was, again, my body was at its sort of weirdest, lowest place. So I'm starting to do my rehab workouts. And then in December, I woke up one day with a little bit of a weird sensation in my chest. Didn't feel so good. I tried to rest for the day. It kept getting worse. Knowing what I had gone through, my wife and I decided to go to the hospital just in case. They kept me there. They did a bunch of tests. They couldn't see anything that was majorly wrong except a little inflammation around my heart. They said an Advil will take care of it. Go home and see your doctor in a week. I followed up with my doctor in a week. She listened to my heart. She goes, you seem okay. Something sounds a little off maybe in the beat. So let me refer you to a cardiologist. Another week goes by. I see the cardiologist. He listens to my heart and says, yeah, I'm hearing a little something too. I'm going to have you go do what's called an echocardiogram in a few days, which is basically like an ultrasound of your chest to get an accurate picture of your heart. Well, this is where I really feel divine intervention came into play in some sense, because something was a little off with my heart. But what really happened was the day I had my echocardiogram was the day that the problem actually happened. And I went in, I had this echocardiogram. It was a Saturday morning, December 16th. I remember it like it was yesterday. I do this echo with the tech. She finishes. She looks at me. And at the time, I couldn't put two and two together. She goes, I'll be right back. She goes, she calls, tries to get hold of the doctor. She can't get hold of him. She comes back, she goes, okay, you can go. I put a message into the doctor though. I'm gonna review your test with him as soon as he gets back to me, and we'll be in touch. My wife and I leave. It was, December. So we were invited to this holiday party. It was a luncheon party, seeing a bunch of friends that we hadn't seen in a long time. We were having a great time. None of them had seen me since cancer. And it's hugs and photos and love, and we're having food. And I feel good. To be honest, I felt like nothing was wrong with me, but I'm a little crazy. I step away. I'm using the bathroom. I pull out my phone. It was in my pocket. I had the ringer off. And I noticed 3 missed calls and 3 voicemails. And all 3 of them are from the cardiologist. Justin, where are you? Justin, where are you? And as I'm listening to the 3rd voicemail, the phone rings again, and it's him again. And I answer this time, why haven't you been answering your phone? And I'm like, oh, I'm at a party. He's like, no, you need to leave. Go straight to UCLA Hospital emergency room. Just tell them your name. they're going to be expecting you. I was like, why? I'm like, I feel okay. I'm having fun. Can we hang out for a little longer? He's like, no, you got to go right now. I was like, all right, fine. So I get my wife, I pull her aside. I tell her, we got to go to this hospital now. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, apparently they think something needs to be checked out. So he didn't tell me what was wrong. He told me later why. So we say goodbye to everybody and we leave. We're in Hollywood at this party. We live in the Valley. The hospital's on the West Side. Our house in the Valley is not on the way to the West Side. However, knowing all the times I've had to spend in the hospital, I was like, if they're going to admit me and keep me for a night or two or whatever, I want to get some stuff. I want my book, my journal, my toothbrush, my contact lens stuff, some snacks. Like, I like to be prepared to go into the hospital. So we foolishly went home so I could pack a bag. This is really dumb when we realized later why. We get to the hospital. I go up to the ER. And for anybody out there who's been to an emergency room, typically you walk in and it's a whole process. And then they do the triage. And then they say, go sit down. And 3 hours later, someone comes and gets you. I walked in. I was like, hi, I'm Justin Sandler. They said, please come with us. And they took me right in. Like, didn't even stop and do tests. Immediately hooked me up to an EKG, started running numbers. And then a few minutes later, the door flies open. This is a Saturday. 2 surgeons in street clothes walk in. They were the on-call heart surgeons that were in the area. My doctor personally reached out and got hold of them. And they showed up in their street clothes and they said, hey, do you know what's going on? And I said, I know, I'm just here. They're like, all right, you had an echocardiogram. Based on the tests that we're seeing, your heart is currently collapsing under a liter of fluid. It's called a cardiac tamponade. If we don't get you into surgery now, puncture your chest and start draining this fluid, you're going to be dead within a couple hours. Oh, okay. And I feel all right because I'm like crazy. So I'm like, oh, okay. I guess we're going to do this. And so they took the machines off and I get up and I'm standing there with my wife. We're waiting in this little hospital room for the nurse or whomever was going to come and get me and bring me in while they went to prepare. The guy walks in knowing what a cardiac tamponade is. Like, this is a real thing, right? He walks in, looking at the paper. He looks up at my wife and I, and he goes, where's the patient? And I'm like, that's me. He's like shocked that I was standing. Apparently this is so heavy that you have no strength. You can barely move. Like you're sick and sick. And I'm like, yeah, it's me. I'm the patient. Let's do this. Like, I was like all energetic and fine. And everyone was like, whoa, this is not what it's supposed to be. This is why it's really amazing that I got there when I did and why this test was such a divine thing, because what they told my wife while I was in surgery is that this is a thing that cardiac tamponade is called a widowmaker because it makes you dead. And because most of the time when you finally realize that you have one of these, it's already too late to get to a surgeon. And because I felt so good and I didn't have a problem, by the time I would have felt that something was wrong with me, it would have probably been too late. So it's amazing that everything happened the way it did. They got me in. They said to me, when was the last time you ate? And I'm like, an hour ago. I just came from a party. And they're like, we can't sedate you because you have food in your belly. So you're going to have to just be awake this whole time. So now I have surgery while I'm awake. They gave me a little local injection for a little bit of a numbing on my chest. But then they had to puncture my chest through a plate into my heart. And I had to just sit there and watch them do this and start furiously pumping fluid out of my heart sac. It was an interesting experience, to say the least, to be part of this. I watched them pump a little more than half the liter out while I was there until enough came out to rest the heart. They then put a bag on me that was attached to the hose inside of my chest. And they said, we're going to put you up in the hospital room and you're going to have to wear this bag for the next few days. It's going to continue to suck the fluid off of your heart over the next couple of days while we monitor you. So I go up into my room. I got this blood bag hanging next to me, a fluid coming off of it. A few days later, my cardiac thoracic surgeon comes back to visit me. Justin, well, we saw what happened with your cardiac tamponade. We're going to recommend another surgery. We have a fear because there's no reason that should have happened except if there was trauma or cancer. And you told us that there was no trauma. So there could be cancer in your heart. We need to get in there and look at it. And if there is cancer there, we need to do this crazy procedure where they sort of cement off part of my heart area so that it can't spread anymore. If there isn't, they're going to still do what's called a pericardial window, which is where they create about $1 size hole at the base of my heart sac so that it kind of creates a drain. So fluid would just drip through into my belly if it ever happened. So I begrudgingly agree to another surgery, which I have a week later. This time, instead of the open chest, they could enter me on the side, not as invasive as sawing my chest open. I come out of this surgery. I'm alive. There's a great video, my wife and I together, and she's explaining to me what happened in the surgery. What happened was there was some blood clots that happened around my heart after the big surgery, and they created a fusion between my left lung and my heart. And the two organs were stuck together. So while in there, they had to actually dissect the two organs apart from each other again. They created that hole. They tested it. There was no cancer. So I got the permanent hole. The lungs and the heart are separate. Everything else has looked good. They sent me back into a room for another week. Then it was the holiday. Christmas came. I spent the hospital over the holiday, which was, again, an interesting experience, but in a weird way, beautiful too, I guess. I was in the hospital right up until New Year's. They said, okay, you seem like you're good to go. We're going to release you. I got out 2 days before New Year's Eve. I got released. And I mean, I had no strength. My body after the heart thing really kicked my ass. And like my strength, my stamina, my everything was just at the lowest it could have been. Walking up a flight of stairs was impossible for me.
How was that mentally for you?
Hard because of where I was not even a year before. Running up and down the field, flag football, running kids half my age, playing drums, all this stuff. And now it's like a couple steps and I'm out of breath. So that was hard and I didn't like it. I just had to deal with it.
Did it teach you patience?
Did it teach me patience? I mean, yes. And I also went through some really dark times on the other side. Like I survived cancer and was teaching people, helping people, and learning and growing so much as an individual, more than I would have any other time in my life. You know, like I didn't even mention, like I came up with a motto, a philosophy early on in my cancer that came to me during some Buddhist chanting called embrace, love, free. And I applied this throughout and I share this throughout. And it's all about how to embrace the obstacle, whether it's cancer or whatever. Embrace it, own it, respect it, not going anywhere. You know that instead of being the victim of it, to say, I am with this and I'm going to face this, but I'm not going to be the victim. I'm going to take responsibility for what I can. And then love became like this place where I learned how to love cancer, how to love my experience, love my obstacle, because what I have, what I'm going through, it's here. Like it's not going anywhere. I have a tumor. It's also made out of my own cells, my own body. It's part of me. How am I going to hate it, go to war with it, F cancer, all the things people would say to me? None of that resonated. If it's part of me and they're just cells that aren't good or aren't bad, they're just trying to survive like any living thing would. How am I going to hate that? How am I going to sit there and send negative energy to something inside of my own chest? No, I got to send love energy. I got to love and have appreciation for this tumor. And I did. I talked to him. I was telling him I love you and thank you. You have become my greatest mentor, my teacher. Wow. And even though you didn't do what you were set out to do way back when, you still accomplished something great. And know that, your mission was different than what you were programmed to do, but your mission was very just. And here, look at what we're doing because of this. So tumor and cells, rest easy knowing that your job was still done and you still did a great thing for me in the world, but it's safe for you to go now. And I had to have that conversation too. I love you, but you have to go. And it just the process became that much more easy for me to do. And I think that the survival I had and the experiences I had and the ability to learn and to share my lessons came out of vibrating in that love energy. Otherwise, I'd be laying there in the bed being like, I have a tumor and I have cancer and please just make this stop. And there's no space for growth unless you flip the script on what you're facing, which is why I tell people no matter what the obstacle is, cancer or something really small with work or whatever it could be, embrace that obstacle and give love and gratitude that by overcoming the obstacle, you will receive a great benefit. And that is really what fueled me and kept me going and kept me sharing and got me to the other side, not just to survive, but to thrive. Now, when I got to the other side of those last surgeries and I was just shelled, I fell into a little bit of a depression again. And it was interesting to see that. And I started feeling a little bit of a victim again because I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get back to work. I couldn't do anything physically, but at the same time, I also wasn't the cancer patient anymore. Like when I couldn't do anything physically a few months ago, I was still Justin the cancer patient. I was in the hospitals. I was being treated well with the nurses. All the friends were coming over and helping out. And now like I'm a survivor. And so the phone rang less. Visitors were less. There was no nurses taking care of me and giving me all the compassion that nurses do. And so I felt lonely. I started to like almost fantasize about being in the hospital again. Because at least there, I felt like I was taken care of and I was growing. And now I'm sitting here and no one cares anymore and I can't do anything. And I spent a couple months trying to find my way through. And a lot of anger started to come up, anger at people who should have been there, who weren't, things that would surface that would come up for me. But I eventually, got out of my own way again. And I realized that the third step, the free of embrace, love, free, I had not applied that yet. And I realized that I was still living as a cancer patient. I wasn't letting myself move forward and accepting my current circumstances. So I said, okay, let's go back to the start. If it was last year again, and let's Let's embrace where I am today. This is what I can do today. So I can't get up a flight of stairs. So what? I can get halfway up, embrace that. Embrace my body now.
This is like a whole separate journey to what you've been on.
It's starting over part 2 of the journey because, and my oncologist said to me, like, once I was declared cancer free, she said something that rang really, really true to these days now. She said, so consider this the halfway point. And I didn't get what she meant. And then I understood that rebuilding your body and getting back to finding some normalcy, there was another year and a half before I found that. But when I realized that I had to embrace where I was and give love to the challenge that I was facing where I was and accept and love everything about my life and knew that I had so much to offer now, I started to flip the script again. And then I realized that it was time to free my obstacle, free the story of being a cancer patient and move forward into the new version of me, 2.0. Go back to the idea of helping people and teaching people and start applying this to the biggest scale possible. And then I started doing speaking engagements. I did a storytelling event, speaking for UCLA. I started writing more. I then created a one-man show called Embrace Love Free. And I performed that all through 2019, which was a beautiful experience. 90-minute one-man show, 20 characters, full of comedy. I played drums in it. So I got to start playing drums again in my show, doing poetry. And then all those videos that we did, which I never knew I'd do anything with, I edited them into little 1-minute vignettes. And I would play them on the screen in between scenes to sort of bridge the gap of where we were versus what I was playing on stage. And it really made it a multimedia, really full experience. And it was a lot of fun. And I played it 5 times at 2 different festivals, 2019. When the world shut down last year, I edited together the footage from one of the early shows and I did a streaming event to help raise money for the theater. And I don't know if I'll play that show again or when, but I do have a version of it on a private YouTube link. So if anybody listening really wants to see it, send me a message, go to my website, justinsandler.com and send a contact form. And I'll send you that unlisted YouTube link so that you can watch it because it's funny and entertaining, but there's a lot of lessons about what I went through and about how you can apply to yourself as well through that. I also started writing my book, got my first TEDx talk, which I did in 2019, November at Illinois State University. We flew back to Chicago, and kind of the hometown, went down there, did TEDx Normal, had a great experience on the big stage. By the middle of 2020, last year, I got notified that my talk had been banned by the TED organization. That was like hard to swallow. I was really pissed about that.
Why was that?
They considered it too faith-based, even though there's no actual faith in it. That was the best excuse I was given through my local organizers. They said it was too faith-based healing. Even though I said I did all the Western medicine and I said I did everything, I just worked in a lot of my spirituality and a lot of my essence. I didn't like it, but I had to accept that my talk was banned. I did a TED Talk. I could never share it. Funny enough, later in the year, they reached out to me again and they said, Justin, we'd love to bring you back. We're going to do our next event. It's going to be all virtual. So you're going to produce your talk on your own, but it's going to air in February. We'd love to have you as a speaker again. And our coach will help you edit the talks and make sure that it's in compliance with all the TED guidelines. So I rewrote the speech. I took all the woo-woo out. I kept my spiritual essence in, but anything that could be, you can see there's 2 woo-woo I took out. Any claim I made about childhood trauma, about my illness, about anything that happened, I used slides with Harvard University, Mayo Clinic, Psychology Today, like all the different. So like, there's nothing they can say that it isn't backed up. We did the talk. It was aired during the live event that TEDx Normal did in the beginning of February. All the talks were uploaded to the TED YouTube channel. My talk was not. And then last month, I had just gotten back from being in Chicago, my grandmother passing and everything. And I get an email from them saying the TED organization has refused to upload your current talk as well. No excuses given. We try to appeal. They won't tell us why. They won't let it on. They're not going to put it on their channel. So I was like, Jesus, man, what is wrong with, like, what do you guys got against me? And I'd ultimately determined that maybe my talk is just too deep for TED. It's crazy. You work so hard to do these talks too. It's a lot of work to write and memorize a 15-minute speech and to build all the slides and to then perform it and capture it and edit it. The only glimmer is that they told me, well, you self-produced this one, so you can do with it what you want at this point. It's just not going to go up on the TED channel. So depending on when your audience hears this episode, it may or may not be on my YouTube channel. I am going to plan my own release. I do feel that this talk needs to be out there. The message is really important because it's not just about cancer. It's about, the talk is called 3 Steps to Overcome Any Obstacle. And it's really how you can apply what I went through, how you can apply to any obstacle you're facing and ultimately become better from it. So I am going to tighten it up. I'm going to put it on my own YouTube. I'm going to do my own release in the next, perhaps a couple of weeks or month, now that I know I can do that. And I'm still going to share it. And the people that need to see it are going to see it. And I'll have to do it without the backing of TED. But my coach even said, you are still a 2-time TEDx speaker and no one can take that from you. Yeah, I have all the pictures to prove it. It's just because they're not on the TED channel doesn't mean I'm not a TED speaker. So I just got to embrace, love, and free that too, right? It is what it is. But I'm back to writing my book. I had to put that down for a minute. I'm writing again now. I'm about 2/3 done with writing the book. And so I hope to have that done this year. And it's called Embrace, Love, Free, 3 Steps to Overcome Any Obstacle. And it's a teaching memoir about my journey and about how to apply it throughout the steps. And so once we can open up to more speaking engagements, I'm going to go out there and hopefully, do some more keynote speaking. I got to speak for the UCLA Medical School grad program.
I saw that. That was great, man.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I also spoke for UCLA over a Zoom event a couple months ago. And I got to talk about, all the different things of living in their hospital and then in the humanitarianism throughout it. And humanism is the word I'm looking for. I've been able to share and I will continue to share. I know that it's not about me. There's a lot here that can help people. And we've only touched on the surface of it in this talk, but it's my mission ultimately to continue to share this positivity and this good vibration and to keep living my life and always know where I came from, but not ever live as a cancer patient again and not try to be the person I used to be, but the new version of myself. So, bands started asking me to start jamming again. I started to try to play. My stamina and my chops weren't quite there yet, just because my anatomy has changed. But I'm still pushing, and I think I'll be able to start playing some gigs again. May or may not do a 90-minute headlining rock show. Maybe, I don't know yet, but I'm working towards it. But I'm not going to, if it doesn't work out, I'm not going to beat myself up for it. This is where I am. I'll always be a drummer and a musician, and I'll always keep playing. What happens from now, I don't know.
Has music helped you with any of the recovery at all?
It was not so much like songs as it was more vibrational healing frequencies. I was listening to these, they're called solfeggio sounds. They're like frequencies. They're not our standard 440 tuning. They're like healing frequencies that you can just listen to them and they have healing properties. And so I would pump it on the speaker, like in the hospital. I'd be laying there with the chemo running all night long. And I'd have on the speaker on the other side of me just blasting these healing frequencies all throughout the night. So, it wasn't so much like it was, look, in the hospital, I had my drumsticks with me. I had an acoustic guitar with me. I kept, doing music stuff. I kept writing things. Music has always inspired me and touched me. And when I make film, I'm like, I almost hear the soundtrack before I see the visual. That's a lot of times I write based on the song that's going to be in the scene. So it's always there, just getting to sit down and rock out again. I can't see in your audience here, but I got this beautiful new DW kit behind me that my wife helped me get an artist deal with them at the beginning of last year. And I got this clear, beautiful drum kit. It just feels good to sit down and play regardless. And again, if some bands are courting me already and I might find my way there. But in the meantime, I'm busy. Business is booked with a lot of projects and my book needs to be finished. And I love speaking. So I don't know where the future goes exactly. I don't know. I started, doing acting stuff again. I had a few last year or right before the shutdown. I booked 3 different films and acting roles that I got to do, which was awesome. One of the films just got distribution and it's coming out soon. I was on a commercial shoot last week. Just signed with a brand new theatrical agent and just started auditioning again last week.
That calendar's filling up again.
Yeah, it's full. It's full. And so I'm doing all the things I love, but I don't feel the desperation really. I'm going with the flow right now. And I still have my moments, but I'm going with the flow and I'm having fun and I'm getting to be an artist and I'm getting to do inspirational stuff. And my wife and I are going to start doing 2 documentary feature films. The first one we're going to start on is called Caregiving Cancer, The Silent Heroes, which is a movie based on our experience where we're going to dive deep into the caregiver's experience of cancer, really shine light on what that looks like and how to support caregivers, because no one really talks about the caregivers. It's how's the patient, but no one really looks how's the caregiver. But every cancer patient, there's a caregiver who needs support. So we're going to make this documentary film about that. And so caregivingcancer.org, if anybody wants to see what we're doing, we're raising some funds now. We're going to start shooting soon, hopefully. And I don't know, just living life. And I'm still working on myself. I'm doing a lot of working with coaches and self-improvement and realizing that, now I can start focusing on some of the stuff that was holding me back before cancer was a thing. That's, surfacing a little bit. Okay, I never really addressed A, B, and C and this trauma and what that happened there. And the things that may have been holding me back from my greatness, that I put those aside even to face cancer. And now I'm like, okay, I can start doing some of the sovereign work on myself. Improvement can always happen, right? Always room to grow. We'll never stop growing. If you stop growing, you start dying. So I really believe in constantly reinforcing that personal growth model. And that's where I'm at today. And again, I'm excited for the future, and I just keep getting up every day and doing my best. And here we are talking.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your story. Just it's incredible, and just the message which is being put out, it's great. I think a lot of people will take a lot from it and enjoy it. So I really appreciate you sharing it with us, mate. It's been great. It's been very, very cool.
It's been a pleasure talking with you too. It's been a long time,
man. I've loved it. I've loved finding stuff out about you, and I followed your whole journey while you was going through it all.
It's amazing that you did that too. I love that. Really appreciate that.
I'm glad to see you're in such a great place now, and things are exciting and moving forward.
Yeah, I got some strength back. I got some hair back. It's like you wouldn't know unless you saw like the scars and stuff. Let your audience know, like my website, people are welcome to reach out to me. One thing I was going to share is that I actively help cancer patients. It's not a business. I don't charge for this, but like in the last 2 weeks, I've talked to 5 different cancer patients. Some people I know, some people I've never met that were just introduced to me. And I just realized that if I am free to do it, I can create that space to speak with someone going through it, to listen what experience they're having, and just sort of be an ear for them to sort of vent to someone who's been there, to offer advice if they want it. People find it interesting, like all their friends and family want to tell them what they should do, and they come at them a different way. For me, I'm like, you know what, I'm here just to hold space for you, and wherever this goes, it goes. And if you want help, I can help. If you just want me to be here to listen, great. But I've successfully introduced people to doctors at UCLA. This girl this morning hit me back and said that I got a referral from my oncologist to another doctor for her type of cancer. And just today, everything got approved, and she's going to go with that doctor because some of the best in the business at UCLA. So the fact that I've been able to refer people to doctors or just be there to help other people going through it, it's been an honor to do that. And so I always say, like, if you're going through it, reach out. I had someone in Canada who reached out to me. Her younger sister, who was a teenager, was going through it. I was able to support them. They saw a video that I had done on Instagram during my second round of chemo, where I sang a goofy song as the nurse was hooking up my port and everything. I started singing, "It's chemo time. It's chemo time." Like just stupid 20-second song, right? Her sister searched on Instagram germ cell and found that little video. And when she finally got hold of me, she said, "We watched that. And every time I took my little sister to chemo, we would sing 'It's chemo time' in the car to get us inspired." And I was like, oh my God, that's everything. The fact that I did that, I had no thought that would impact somebody. I was just being goofy one day in the hospital. I had another fella reach out to me on Instagram. He's in India. He reached out about his friend. I still haven't even talked to his friend. He needed help. He needed advice. His friend had a germ cell tumor also. And I was helping him through messaging someone in India across the world. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you need support, I'm here. And I just always want to put that out there, that if I can help in any way, it's an honor to do so. And if my materials help support people, I will keep doing that because, again, it's not about me.
Wonderful, man. Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just great to hear.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you go, sir. I've kept you for too long. It's been great.
It has been great, man. You have a good night.
All right, man. You take care. I'll speak to you later.
All right, man.
Cheers, dude.
Cheers.
What an incredible story, right? Thank you to Justin Sandler for sharing all of that with us and taking us on such a ride here on the Straight to Video podcast. If you perhaps have had similar experiences, feel maybe inspired, or just want to learn more and reach out to Justin, then all his social media is at Justin Sandler. But to dive in a little deeper, please check out justinsandler.com, where you can learn more about his journey, but also all of his film, TV, and music projects. There's lots and lots to be found there. Also, please check out everything that is available at stvpod.com, which includes over 100 episodes of this show to listen to, along with straight-to-video music, videos, and merchandise. Plus, if you want to get that little bit more involved in the show, please visit patreon.com/stvpod and find all the different tiers of support, which start at just £2 a month, and that really helps make a difference in the growth and success of this show. Okay, this was an episode for the books, and I hope you enjoyed it and took something away from it. Thanks as always for listening and the amazing support you continue to show, and I can't wait to speak to you all again real soon.